What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only NIO stock, which you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to do some in-depth technical analysis and give you guys my price prediction for tomorrow based off the charts are showing and based off the data is suggesting. I'm also going to break down what's going on in the overall market, how this may affect NIO, and also what NIO put on their Twitter page, which still makes me very bullish for the long-term future. Now, before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner, so don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. Not only benefits me, it benefits the entire NIO community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any of these 12 free stocks could be a free NIO share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 4 days. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Looking at NIO, we had a very interesting day. So I'm sure a lot of people started to panic. They got very worried yesterday when they saw NIO down like 15% for the day. We were actually down like 25% at one point, like when we actually touched $8.38. We got a big bounce off that, and we ultimately closed down 15% yesterday. Now today comes, and I mentioned to everyone, do not panic, don't be afraid. I'm still bullish long term, and for the short term, there could still be pain. But I mentioned that this thing does have potential to actually push up a bit more. I wanted to see NIO actually break above the $10 resistance level. And what ended up happening was NIO got a nice push into open. The whole market began to rally, and this gave NIO an extra boost. And what happened is NIO closed up almost 12.5%. So we almost made back all the losses from yesterday. NIO did pretty well today. It's up over 10%, which is a very good sign. And to me personally, I think the future is kind of capricious at this point, at least for the short term, because yes, the market has potential to push up a bit more, but we are going to see some more resistance and some more chop, I think, around this range for some time before we do pick a big direction. And I still believe that there is more momentum for the market to continue pushing up. But before we just continue to rally to the moon, there may be a little bit of chop before getting there. Because looking at some earnings that just barely came out, Google reported earnings, also known as Alphabet, and they missed on top and bottom lines. So looking down right here, they missed on earnings per share. They also missed on, let me see, the revenue overall. The YouTube advertising revenue was a little bit low too. Google Cloud revenue was basically a little bit above what they expected, but almost everything was actually down. So they did actually miss for the most part. This could have a negative effect on the markets. And then also for Microsoft's end, we actually have good news from this because they actually beat expectations. If we go down right here, the earnings showed $2.35 per share for the earnings per share. They actually beat on expectations, and the revenue was also a nice beat. So Microsoft did well, but Alphabet, also known as Google, they missed overall. So this could have kind of like a mixed effect on the markets. Now, tomorrow before the market opens, we have Boeing, we have other big banks announcing earnings, but the bigger thing would be after the close when we have Meta and Ford. Not to mention on Thursday, we have Shopify, McDonald's, Apple, Amazon, Intel, lots of big ones for Thursday. So be ready for that. And for the short term, I want to talk about other big metrics affecting NIO. You guys could see price pairs comparison. SPY is starting to pump. NIO was pretty much oversold and now it's starting to follow. The price pairs ratio is still showing as pretty low because of yesterday, but I do believe this is going to show a big pop to the upside relatively soon because of this nice day, and also because the ratio is going to be heavily impacted. Now, we are still seeing lots of buy ratings from many big investors and analysts. And what else is very interesting is the shorting on NIO has been coming down to some degree. So the shorts really piled in, drove this thing down. They must have shorted this thing very hard as lots of sellers came in, and this thing dropped to like $8. And lots of them are actually kind of like coming out of their positions. They're not shorting it as hard as before. So this is some good momentum for NIO to actually push up a bit more over the next couple of days. The volume was pretty nice. This was kind of like a reaction day to the big red day we saw yesterday. Overall, almost 100 million in volume. So good sign from NIO from there. And the shortfall in percentage, I don't think this is going to be accurate just yet, but for yesterday it was actually like 58%. That's pretty high overall a big increase because shorting was just going crazy yesterday. But today, I do believe it did come down a bit, and we are going to see this come down by the time we get to tomorrow. So overall, guys, things are still looking all right for NIO, but from a fundamental standpoint, NIO is still very, very strong. Do not forget the ET7. It has a very incredible wheelbase, not to mention its width, its amazing space for all the people inside of it. It has a very, very nice interior right here, so it's a beautiful car. And on top of that, it's going to be very popular in Europe, in my honest opinion, in countries like Norway, in Germany. In Germany, it's already becoming a hit. We are starting to see deliveries there, and I am still very, very bullish for the long-term future, despite what on earth the share price may show for the short term, because the market is uncertain. There's lots of tensions around the world. There's lots of fear, uncertainty, and doubts every now and also because of the fact that in the markets, economies are just not in the best of states with inflation roaring. So what's interesting about the market right now is looking at SPY. This thing just pumped and pumped and pumped and did not want to stop at all. We managed to hit 385, blowing past the $380 level of resistance. But the real question is, why is the market pumping like this? And one thing that is unfortunate is the fact that in this market, all right, the Wall Street Journal released an article a couple of days ago. I mentioned this, that they do believe the Fed may pivot sooner than expected. So because of this whole narrative that, oh, the Fed may not be as hawkish as we think, the market is starting to rally a lot more. Some earnings, at least most earnings so far, were pretty good, except for Alphabet's. Also, Tesla did miss on, I think it was revenue. So there were some misses here and there, but some good gains too, like Microsoft. And right now, don't worry too much about the after hours. I think what matters more is where we open tomorrow and the last market the last hour into the pre-market. So that's what really matters a lot more than what we're seeing right now in the after hours. So what I'm anticipating is for tomorrow, because there was a miss by Alphabet, it is possible for us to get a lot of chop in this zone right here. I'm not necessarily trying to be pessimistic, but it is something that could end up happening for the short term. Looking at this from a longer time frame, it does look bullish from a technical standpoint. There's not a key indication of us just reversing, but right around this 388 level, this is where we might see a lot more resistance. So I do believe we are eventually going to get there. I just don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. We might see a slight pullback, some the market might rest a bit. So you could see in this zone right here, let me just zoom into it. Right here in this zone, there tends to be a little bit of chop. So this could bring us down to this 382 level. I want to see us hold this level pretty well. And what I anticipate is we might see a little bit of sideways action before another continuation into the later days. So that's essentially what I'm basically predicting at this point. We also have, I think we have a gap up here too. Let me double check this for you guys. I think there's a gap. Oh no, this gap was already filled. So never mind about the gap. But like I said, I think there's actually a gap right here. Oh, wait, there is one right here. I think I missed this. It's at about 389, so we could end up filling the gap at 389 over the next couple of days. But for tomorrow, before we just start to just rocket to the upside, I think there might be a little bit of chop tomorrow, guys. The market might see some sideways action, some range trading between this 385 to 382 level. We might just go back and forth for some time before we get a big continuation, hopefully later on during this week. So what does this mean for NIO? What this essentially tells us is, firstly, the QQQ, the SPY, the Nasdaq, they tend to be correlated. They just pumped today together. We saw the Nasdaq fill its gap. This also pushed up pretty hard, and we are entering this very critical zone where we actually got a rejection beforehand. So if the Nasdaq does continue to push up a little bit more from here, we do have potential to enter this really high 11,500 zone. But before we actually pump up like that, right, we might see a little bit chop, just like what we saw right over here back around the very beginning of October. So we could see a little bit of chop in the Nasdaq first before we continue pushing up. So it is something to really watch for, especially after Alphabet's earnings. On something else that's important is the QQQ. Same thing almost. We did actually break above this chop zone temporarily. We actually closed above it too. So I'm hoping for another continuation, but it is possible for the market to affect this, and it does come down back to this 280 zone. We could come down just temporarily and then get a big continuation later. So I'm seeing a big correlation between the QQQ, the SPY, and the Nasdaq, like I mentioned. For NIO, I do believe this will have an effect on us. So anyways, looking at the chart, NIO is a little bit different because NIO does have two gaps. We have one way down here in this $9.47 zone. We have another gap all the way up here in this $11 zone. So what I'm seeing on NIO is this thing was oversold, but we are getting a nice bounce. However, if the market is kind of choppy, NIO might see some chop tomorrow. However, it still has more potential to continue the rally to the upside because first off, we're gaining a lot of momentum. We saw that big drop and we are starting to still recover from it. And I really believe that we're more likely to fill this gap to the $11 range instead of just coming all the way back down to the mid $9 range. So I'm still more bullish, at least temporarily, for NIO. Based on what the market is likely to do, but I do think we're going to see a little bit of chop before we end up filling the gap, so be ready for that. For tomorrow, we could see NIO kind of like drop like this down to this 10.4 zone. This is actually a very typical resistance level and also a support zone for NIO. So it's 2 and 1. We have potential to bounce at like 10.3, also like 10.2. So it's all over the place. But the most critical level I was watching would be the $10 zone. So I want to see NIO hold $10 for tomorrow. Let's see some consolidation around here. And hopefully a little bit later we get a big push above $11. So that's what essentially what I'm seeing for this stock. I am still more bullish than bearish for the short term, but for the medium term, like I mentioned, the market could get a pullback maybe by the time we get to like early November, maybe by mid November, we could see the market pull back a bit. This will have an effect on NIO, but for the long term, all right, for the very long term, like we're talking about next year, the next few years, I'm extremely bullish given what the earnings are telling us, looking at deliveries, what the company is doing, their fundamentals, their expansions. I'm super bullish long term, guys. So that, in my opinion, has not changed. So please be very cautious though, because I want to also note that there is some risk involved in investing in NIO because it is an overseas stock, and also there are some tensions around the world with China. And that's the reason why I wouldn't necessarily go all in on any stocks, because you have to be very cautious and learn how to mitigate your risks. So with that said, I'm still very bullish long term, and that was not financial advice, by the way. I'm still very bullish. Don't let the best stocks really stop you from being logical. You can't let your emotions get the best of you. All right, guys. I'm still very bullish for NIO. I want to see a nice continuation maybe by tomorrow or the next couple of days. I want to see us slowly get above $11, hopefully by Thursday. But for tomorrow, I am anticipating a little bit of a chop before that, maybe a kind of flat day. So be ready, guys. Some small pullback is completely normal, but then after that, I'm hoping for a big push, kind of like within the next couple of days. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. NIO to the moon, because the long term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.